VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker, the 0-3 Vikings. They lost to the Chargers. Now they head to Carolina for a road date with Adam Thielen's Panthers. And I think right out of the gate, I need to apologize to you guys and gals because I think I got this thing wrong. All spring and summer, I told all of you that this was a pretty good football team to the tune of 10-7, 11-6. Ultimately talked myself into 11-6. And I guess I was wrong. There is always something wrong with the 2023 Vikings. Something is always disjointed. In the first game against the Buccaneers, the defense looked wonderful in the first half, but the offense couldn't get off the 3-and-out woes. Second half, the defense was figured out against the Buccaneers. The offense got cooking, and then there was some fumbles. Second game against the Philadelphia Eagles, the run defense was suspect and was horrible, let's face it. The offense mostly hummed, but then they had fumbleitis all over the place. Something was wrong against Philadelphia. Against the Chargers, Justin Herbert just kept things in the intermediate passing zone and to the tune of 405 yards while the Vikings finally got the run game going. Had one fumble from TJ Hawkinson, moved the ball on offense at some times, but then there were penalties. Nothing good ever happens at the same time. Everything is disconnected. And I don't know what the byproduct or what the cause here is, but it's not going well. And at 0-3, there are only 4 teams since 1990 that have later reached the postseason. And I say 1990 because that's when 6 teams per conference were allowed in the playoffs. I think 6 teams in NFL history have righted the ship from 0-3 to reach the postseason. No 0-3 team has ever reached a Super Bowl, let alone win it. So those are doomsday stats, I guess, in theory. The Vikings probably would have some crazy stat to be the first team to do it if they were ever going to do it. But let's face it, that's probably not going to happen. I think I'll get this out of the gate before we jump into the 2013 parallels, at least for my emotional state of my mind right now. I do think that the Vikings will end up mirroring the 2020 team, which will drive some of you insane. They're not utterly bad. They do not feel like a team that's going to have a top 3 draft pick unless they start selling off a bunch of shit, fire sale wise. I think that you remember the 2020 season when fans weren't allowed. The Vikings started 0-3. Then they beat the Texans, I believe. Then they lost to the Falcons at 1-5. Then they had a bye week, and they went out and beat the Packers at Lambeau because of Dalvin Cook. And before you knew it, they were 500. They had a playoff scenario. All they needed to do was beat the Bucs, and they'd be in the driver's seat. Then they lost to the Bucs. For better or worse, whether you'd like it or not, I have a feeling like a season like that is upcoming because there is oodles of talent on the roster, and this is what teams led by Kirk Cousins do this. They ultimately never struggle to the bottom of the basement. They usually find a way, even when there's deficiencies, to get, I guess in this case, 7-10, 8-9, 9-8. Probably not rich enough for 9-8 or 10-7. But I do believe that this season will eventually right the ship to the tune of the 2020 team. So pull them up on Google and look how those wins and losses went. That's where I think we're headed. And like I said, I don't know if you consider that a positive or not. But this is the first time since 2013 that I am at a point as a writer of the Vikings and as a fan where I don't know what the direction is after this season. And therefore, I lack hope. Mainly because I can usually predict what the Vikings will or won't do. I have no idea what the plan will be from here on out. So I want to jump into that, look at these parallels. I think the first one, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is the QB1. We have a big now what at quarterback because Kirk Cousins is getting paid $35 million, which is just average quarterback money these days. I think it ranks 15th or 16th for average annual value. And we don't know what the future holds at quarterback. This is exactly what happened in 2013. When that season was going on, that was Leslie Frazier's final season. We knew, we were feeling it in our bones that Christian Ponder wasn't the real deal. What's his name? Matt Castle was on the roster. He was a holdover later to the Zimmer era for a game and a half or whatever it was. And then the Josh Freeman game happened in 2013 on Monday Night Football. So Cousins is 1,000 times better than that sandwich of 3 quarterbacks, and there's no doubt about it. But where we're at right now is that Cousins leads the league and is it passing yards and touchdowns, and it doesn't matter. Who cares? It's not working. And so we're at a fulcrum to try to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. I think the problem is if you decide that, hey, we're going to build up the rest of this roster and sign Kirk Cousins back for $40 or $45 million per year, you are doing the same thing over and over again. And after this 0-3 start, even if the Vikings recommitted to Cousins and went and drafted the sexiest offensive guard and defensive end you could ever dream of, do we really think going into next September that, all right, then we got it fixed? No. At the end of the day, everybody looks at a depth chart. They see Kirk Cousins on it. They see 0-3, and they're like, well, yeah, of course. And so I think if they go into season 7 of Cousins, you're like the manager of anything in your life. If you keep trying the same thing over and over, you got to switch the bastard up. You gotta usually flip something on its head to effectuate change. And I don't think that the Vikings, especially after this 0-3 start, unless they have something really sweet up their sleeve, like what would that be, going 11-3 from here on out or something crazy and winning the division. That's the only way that I think Cousins' career in the Vikings would be salvaged is if they went on this unforeseen little stretch. And I mean, do we really think that's going to happen? No, we don't. So I think even though Cousins is doing the thing on an individual level, it's not working or translating to team success. And therefore, just like 2013, I had no clue what they were going to do. At this point in the 2013 season, they were 0-3. Surprise, surprise. I think they beat somebody. Was it the Steelers or something in week 4 and then ended up going, I think they were at 1-6. That's how I feel right now at 0-3. I don't know what the plan is at quarterback, and it's obviously the most important part of the depth chart. And I feel like I have been put in a time machine to age 29 when I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what their plan is at quarterback going forward. Now, this year, I don't think Cousins will be traded to the New York Jets because the biggest problem with that theory is by the time that I believe the Vikings want to even explore a Cousins deal, throwing in the towel, I think that would be about 3 or 4 weeks from now. And guess what? The Jets are probably going to be in the same boat, 1-5 or 1-6. And do they really want to trade more draft capital for another quarterback after they just traded all the shit for Rodgers for a rental of Cousins? Even if they were like 500, that would be an iffy circumstance. But they're probably going to be just 2-5 or something. And the AFC is already crowded for playoff teams. I just don't see the Cousins Jets thing going through unless they traded him like today. Then I could maybe see a pathway there. The other parallel to 2013 is that there are some of the roster personnel pieces that give you optimism. So right now, the big 3 on offense, Christian Darrisaw, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. We think Jefferson will re-sign, although I don't know. If the Vikings somehow embarked on a full rebuild, they had a fire sale here, they got rid of Cousins, traded Danielle Hunter. If I was Justin Jefferson, I wouldn't want to stay with this team long-term because we love this idea of a rebuild because we have this vision that we're going to get Patrick Mahomes and we're going to do the thing. And it's so rare that you find a guy that good who's going to be good right away. Even with Joe Burrow, he got hurt, wasn't very his team wasn't great his first year there, and then he got hurt. And Josh Allen, 2018, 2019, wasn't very good. Turned it around mightily in 2020. The circumstances of a quarterback, you drafting your rookie quarterback and him just walking into a team tailor-made for him and the Vikings start winning right away is so low. We seem to think that these very lucky Vikings are going to be the team that drafts the quarterback of the future and he's got all of these pieces tailor-made for him. And that's why we're criticizing the offensive line. We think that this is going to happen, which doesn't make sense at all. So if I was Justin Jefferson, sadly, I don't know if I would sign that contract extension if they're going to embark on a rebuild. Unless you get him in the front office and say, which quarterback would you think we should draft? I don't know if that's the thing. I think one of the biggest points of paranoia that you should have is whether or not Justin Jefferson will want to stay with a team who's about to get rid of a quarterback that takes care of him pretty well on the field and then embark on life with a rookie quarterback because we all know that those are complete coin flip. Go to any draft recently, your NFL history, and you're going to fall in love with a bunch of these guys in February through April, and then if you're lucky, half of them will be decent. There might be one who's good, and the rest will suck. And you got to hope the Vikings don't pick the guy who sucks. So, like 2013, Harrison Smith was coming up. He looked like a piece on defense you could build around. Checks notes, he was. Everson Griffin was about to get good, although we didn't really know at the time. Kyle Rudolph was morphing into a top 10 NFL tight end. And then you had Adrian Peterson in 2013 at age 27, 28. And we didn't know that his off-the-field shenanigans would arrive, a few months later. But you had pieces in 2013 that you're like, all right, we can work with these. And right now you have similar pieces in Jefferson, Hockenson, and Darisaw, where you're like, all right, well, they can't really – Hawkinson's here for the long haul, whether he likes it or not. Darisaw will probably be re-signed no matter the rebuild or lack thereof. And then Jefferson is the big mystery. So – I just don't know what they're going to make of it with these. Well, like in 2013, when I knew Frazier was probably on his way out, we had these pretty good football players, but then what? Well, ultimately they hired Zimmer, drafted Bridgewater. So we're at the point right now as a parallel, where they're probably going to draft their version of Bridgewater. Let's hope he's better and more healthy than Bridgewater. But I have no clue if they're going to actually do it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll re-sign Kirk. Maybe they'll trade for Kyler Murray, who's probably going to be on the way out if the Cardinals snag the first overall pick. Although beating the Cowboys does not help you when you're trying to do that. So I have generalized mystery about the team's next steps. They have told us that they are in a competitive rebuild. Great. Yeah, we can do that. I understand there's a lot of precedent in NFL history for rebuilding on the fly. That's what good teams do. That's what Pittsburgh Steelers do. That's what the Saints do. That's what the Patriots do. They never burn it to the ground and rebuild. That's how the Chiefs got Mahomes. They didn't go on a rebuild. They just drafted really well quarterback with the 10th pick of the 2017 NFL draft. Tossed him in after a year, and Alex Smith, and the rest is history. So this example, like, well, the Bengals did it and they got Joe Burrow, that rarely works. Hardly ever works that you just tank, get the right guy, and have a fairy tale thereafter. But I have generalized mystery about the next steps because I don't know if they're going to just tank. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah called tanking unconscionable. The idea of it, unconscionable, unfair to players at the NFL Combine back in February. So, and I really don't think this team is just going to mail it in after an 0-3 start. They're going to convince themselves, like perhaps you will in the coming days, that, all right, we can make something of this. We're going to be the first team ever to come back for an 0-3 start and all the rah-rah. But you're facing these stakes to alleviate the mystery, which we will know in 7 months. Like, it's not like you have to feel doom in your heart. It's that there is a lot of mystery because usually Cousins has been attached to this roster since 2018, and you always knew, like, well, if they're going to go 8-9, Cousins will be back because he's under contract, and they're going to retool around him and get the next best coordinator that there is, and hopefully that it works out. We don't have that assurance that Cousins will be back, and I think that's why the mystery is so loud. I guess they could build the trenches and bring Kirk back. I don't think that will happen, nor would I endorse it because I think they need a fundamental change. It's not working. 6 years of Kirk Cousins is not working. It may not be his fault, but it is not working. And as I think, smart general manager, you have to switch things up to effectuate change. And then probably the most likely outcome is they indeed draft the guy of the future. And whether or not Justin Jefferson is a part of it for the long term, we shall see. The good news about Jefferson is he is committed to the team for next year, so he could, in theory, wait and see what they do at quarterback. Do they get Caleb Williams? Do they get Drake May or Shadur Sanders? And maybe that tickles his fancy, and he's like, well, hell yeah, I'll play with Shadur Sanders for the next 5-6 years. Sign me up. Maybe that will happen. But do you know for sure? No, you don't. That's why there's a mystery. And then I'll come back to that trade for Kyler Murray thing. I think he rubs people the wrong way because of his persona, whether it's moody or lazy or not a team player. I'm not exactly sure, outside of like the fact he likes to play video games, why people feel that way about him. But if there was ever a way to stop a full rebuild, let's say the Vikings finish 6-11, 7-10, and end up getting 12th pick in the draft. Who knows if that will be a good spot to get Shadur Sanders or Drake May? Probably not on Drake May. But a very Viking thing to do to ensure that you don't have a honest-to-goodness rebuild or a big mystery about whether or not the rookie quarterback is going to be good would be to trade for Kyler Murray. I don't know what his price tag will be, but he might need a home before too long. If the Cardinals, with one of their draft picks, do want to divorce Murray and this new regime wants to get Caleb Williams or Drake May, then there's no room for Kyler Murray, and he'll have to go somewhere if he doesn't go back to baseball. And you're going to look around at the landscape of the NFL, and you're going to see Kirk Cousins as a free agent. The Vikings don't have a QB1. He will be nominated to join the Vikings, at least in the rumor mill, because where else? I don't know. You'll have to figure out if Murray floats your boat, because I do believe that talker will happen. Now, if they come out and say Kyler Murray's our quarterback, we're not drafting Caleb Williams, good for them. I just think that the prospect of Caleb Williams is too scintillating for them to pass up, especially because they didn't draft Murray in the first place. So I think the moral of the story is we didn't know in 2013 what was going to happen in the coming 7, 8, 9 months. Usually during the Zimmer era and now in the O'Connell era, we had a vibe that Kirk Cousins would return, the defense would hopefully improve, maybe they'd fix the offensive line. But with Cousins not under contract, I think we have genuine mystery for the first time in 10 years about what the team will do going forward. And this doesn't have to be a bad thing. I'm giving you a lot of these scenarios that are like iffy. Whether you like the Kyler Murray idea is up to you. But this can be exciting. Finally get rid of Kirk. There's a lot of you that feel that way. And then, boom, you might get your Bo Nix or Michael Penix. There's going to be a lot of this chatter, believe you me, about the Vikings' next quarterback. And they're going to have a lot of dudes to choose from. McCarthy guy from Michigan. There's a lot of them. Driving home from the Vikings game, I've told you guys and gals before, it's a 4-hour drive. And yeah, it was a feeling of, I don't know what they're going to do. And for a long time, 9, 10 years, there was always a reasonable expectation of, all right, well, after Ponder didn't work out, Spielman's going to give it a shot. He's probably going to draft somebody. Bada bing, he drafted Bridgewater. Well, when that didn't work out, and then Sam Bradford got hurt, this Kirk Cousins guy is going to be available. Let's see if they sign him. They did. And then after that, there was really no 6-year-long mystery about what was going to happen. It was always going to be Cousins, and then whatever roster the general manager of the year figured out was going to accommodate him. And unfortunately for this brand, it's an 0-3 start. We'll be back a lot this week, trying to figure out the ins and outs of the 0-3 start, try to get motivated about what to expect in Carolina. We'll talk to Josh Fry about that on Wednesday. That's all I got. Skol, baby.